So June, as is known to very many, is what they call Pride Month. But specifically, LGBT Pride. Because Pride is connected. They've taken that word Pride and that's connected with LGBT. And even their rainbow flag is known as the Pride flag. You know, we Catholics, we celebrate feasts for a day. Feast of the Blessed Virgin Mary, Feast of the Saints. Of course, I'm not talking about liturgical seasons, but we celebrate feasts for a day. But, you know, the LGBTs, they celebrate Pride for a whole month. And we simply live in what I would call an insane world where grievous sin is to be proud of and is to be celebrated. You know, the most powerful nation in the world, the United States of America, and the very top person, its president, of course, President Joe Biden, just proclaimed this month of June, as lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, and intersex Pride Month. That's the official proclamation of the President of the United States. That's how important it is to him and to them. Yeah, he has invited abortion activists to the White House. And in particular, there's a pro-abortion group that recruits students to be abortion activists. So I invited that group to promote, to propel this LGBT even more than it is already so very widely spread out in the U.S., in the West, and moving throughout the whole world. And just very recently, the President Joe Biden has threatened to take away the lunch money of schools because the federal government provides lunch money. He has threatened to take that away from schools if these schools do not allow transgenders to use the toilets of their choice. So, meaning to say, you know, whatever toilet, whatever you identify with, if you feel like you're a boy or a man today, or if or you're a girl or a woman, whatever is the toilet of your choice, you should be free to use that. And he said, federal government is not giving you lunch money unless you agree to this. That's how much the most powerful nation in the world is pushing LGBT. And so LGBT has advanced very, very rapidly. Of course, this has been going on for the many decades. But the whole aspect of the transgender, that is something that in a way it's been there, but it's fairly new, and only now this is coming upon the scene, and you know, people are simply shocked by the things that are going on. Now, unfortunately, in the West, so you're talking U.S., Canada, you're talking of European Union, LGBT is accepted by most. There are some people, officials, nations who don't accept it, but they remain quiet. Otherwise, they will be accused of all sorts of things, of bigotry, of hatred, of homophobia, and they will be attacked. And the influence of LGBT is so widespread and at the highest levels that, you know, they just keep quiet. They're afraid. And then those who speak out in some way, they are being suppressed, whether by mainstream media, most of mainstream media, or most of social media, they are being suppressed. And then tragically, in our church, our Pope is also pro-LGBT. And of course, when you take a look at the German bishops, are at the forefront of this kind of liberal activism. They are for same-sex unions and even same-sex marriage, and they're going through their synodal way now, and that's what we can expect to come out from their decisions unless the Lord really intervenes. So sometime next year. And then you also know that the Vatican Synod on Synodality is going on. And later on, also next year, they will come out with supposedly what the inputs from consultation with everyone. Everyone has been consulted. What inputs will be there? But here is my forecast, and I do pray. I so fervently pray that it will not be so. But it can only be blunted, of course, by the grace and mercy of God, but also by the activism of Catholics, especially lay Catholics. So we need to know what is going on. And I'm just afraid that our own church, one aim of that Synod on Synodality is to accept homosexuality. Now, LGBT is the most egregious sin as far as I'm concerned. Of course, there is abortion. That is terrible. But LGBT, because it is totally against God's design from the very start. God said, I make them male and female. And transgenderism today saying, no, there's no such thing. You are what you decide you are. And there is no such thing as biological sex. Even though to us it should be obvious, but to transgenders and to LGBT in general, to the woke crowd, no. So that is totally contrary to God's design. And then God, of course, said, He created them male and female, Adam and Eve, and He told them, be fertile and multiply. And of course, if you have LGBT, there is no multiplication, there is no conception, there is no possibility of having, authentic children. They can adopt, but they cannot produce. And so it's totally against the very intent of God. And that is part of the design of the globalist, depopulationist, as a way of not having more people coming into the world. And then, of course, the design of God in the second book of the story of creation is for the man and the woman to become one flesh. This is a great mystery. And the relationship of man and woman is patterned after the relationship of Christ and His church. But when you talk of LGBT, no, it's not man and woman. It is man and man or woman and woman. So it's totally against God's design from the very start. Now, abortion is, of course, very, very grave. But abortion, which is murder came later. So here's God's design. This is what it ought to be. And LGBT, they're violating all of those. Now, when Adam and Eve had Cain and Abel, then murder happened. Cain murdered his brother Abel. So actually, these are the two greatest, most egregious, most terrible sins that are being committed by the so-called liberal, secular, humanist, progressive persons and nations and groups. So it's a terrible situation that we are in. So when you talk of LGBT, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender is turning out to be the worst. Before, even from time immemorial, you would have what you call gays who would be cross-dressers. So the man dressing as a woman because he is gay. But now it's beyond that. That is actually tame. Now you have total insanity. Now you have total stupidity. And what would be these aspects? First of all, they say that a man can be a woman, and vice versa. It's not a question of biology. But if you feel, if you think, if you believe that a man, that you're a woman, then you're a woman. That is the reality to them. And anyone who says otherwise, wow, again, you're a hater, you're a bigot, you're a homophobe. So you are what you want to decide. Totally insane. And then, they have their so-called preferred pronouns. You better not make a mistake. You see a man, obviously a man, and you start talking and you say he, and you might offend that person because he might be identifying as a she. And when you say he, or if you see a girl, you say she, you are already deciding what that person's gender is. You should not do. Because that person's gender is up to that person. Whether that person is a he or a she. And they might prefer otherwise, whatever, and then it might change even from time to time, depending on how they feel. So you have to use the correct pronouns. And they've come up with ridiculous pronouns such as Z, Z-E, or here, H-I-R, or they also say they. You're talking of just one person, but in order not to make the mistake of he or she, you say they and them. Very, very recently, BBC, British Broadcasting Corporation. So, what's the biggest broadcaster in the UK, and very, very prominent. There was a rape case that they reported on, and there was of course a report. The rapist was banned. So, in that report, he was being mentioned, and BBC itself change the words he to the word they, talking of one person. Because that's safe. That person who is obviously a man who raped a woman might be identifying as a woman. So, totally insane. What else? What other insanity is there? They claim that a man can become pregnant. Now you say how ridiculous. Of course you would be right. But I don't know whether they believe it or is it really just insanity. But that's what they say. And Facebook has even created a current emoji of a pregnant man. Utterly ridiculous. And they say that men can menstruate. That's why in some places in the comfort room, they would put tampons in the men's room. Because men can menstruate, so they have that option to make use of these products. And then things like, because they don't want to recognize man or woman or father and mother. So a mother, a woman who gives birth, mothers are called birthing people. Birthing people, because again, they believe that it's not only women, but men who can give birth. What else is happening? So many different things are happening. But one egregious injustice in the world of sports. Because there are men who now say they are women and they participate in women's sports and they are allowed by sports officials. Naturally, they dominate the field. Whether it is swimming, whether it's running, or whatever, bicycling, or whatever it is, the men who claim to be women are now dominating the sport. Poor women, poor real women, because men are men. The way they're built, even though they take hormones and all of that, they certainly have an advantage. And men who did not used to do so well when they were competing with other men are now at the top of the pack. They're now taking the top honors. And these sports officials and these people who watch games are honoring them. And the poor women, many of them just remain quiet. Maybe one has spoken up confidentially, anonymously, because they are afraid. But it's such grave injustice. What else? There are male prisoners who say that they are women, and so they are placed in women's prisons by the officials because they want to, they are woke, and they go with this LGBT, especially transgender thing, and so there's an increase in pregnancies in women's prisons because the men are there who insist that they're women. Now, one really bad thing, one worse thing is that the young kids are being groomed in the schools to accept this whole insane lifestyle. And this is just happening in the schools, and many teachers are part of that woke crowd that they are engaged in this. So much so that now in the United States, the statistics say that 7% of the young people identify as LGBT. Now, I am not sure exactly what age, but 7%. Now, there's more. For Gen Z, Generation Z, those born 1997 to 2012, so that means 10 years old to 25 years old, that number, those who identify as LGBT, rises to 21%. 21%. But you might think, see, doesn't that prove that really there are so many LGBT, so many transgenders? But from scientific knowledge from before, it is said that gender dysphoria meaning to say you're unsure at a certain age, usually as a young age, is not uncommon. And many of the young children, at some point when they are a little bit older, will naturally go with their actual gender or sex. Of course, because that is God's design. So it would have passed. It wouldn't have gone to 21%. But the thing is, in today's culture, they are being encouraged, even by some parents. And sometimes the parents impose it upon themselves. They have a boy, but they want a girl, so they might raise that child as a girl. Now, here is the challenge, because by that by itself, the young child, very impressionable, and this is what they see, so they're being groomed right there when they are very young, so might grow up thinking, I'm gay, or however. But the thing is, even while they are young, they are now being given hormones, puberty blockers, at some certain stages, even surgery. So that would be practically irreversible. So no opportunity even for the child as he or she is growing to finally realize that I'm a boy, or I'm a girl. And this grooming, even the toy companies, they're all in on it. Mattel has a transgender Barbie doll. Barbie has been around for a long time, and others might still have that time when Barbie was a real woman. But now Mattel, that toy maker, has a transgender Barbie doll. Fisher Price, that's another toy company. They have drag queen dolls. These drag queens, they are the grotesque, with heavy makeup, with and they're men dressing as women, but in a grotesque way, sometimes with horns and some atrocious outfits and so on and so forth. But many drag queens now, because of the woke culture, are in public libraries talking and relating to young children. So this is part of the grooming. So young children, they're seeing, ordinarily if they see that, they would be so scared because they look so terrible, so grotesque. But if that happens regularly, and this is a public library is a nice place, and the parents allow it, they become used to it. That is what grooming is all about. They're being raised to accept all of these abnormalities as normal. Now, you might think that, okay, the drag queens are, those are really abnormal people. Yes, I believe they are. But there is even one drag queen who is a United Methodist Church, one of the Protestant churches, pastor. They would say she, is a church pastor. And he has put out a profane video and even saying God is nothing. Of course, LGBT has come already into the Protestant churches, which are lost as far as all of this is concerned. And then very recently, the United States Supreme Court had a vacancy, so President Biden appointed a black woman to be the Supreme Court nominee. And while she was going through, wait, something's coming up in my. Am I still okay? Because there's something coming up in my screen. So anyway, but the she was appointed to the U.S. Supreme Court, and while she was being interrogated by Congress, she was asked, what is a woman? Okay, let me see if there's something here. Okay, she was asked what is a woman, and she said, I don't know what a woman is, because I'm not a biologist. So now there's a lot of talk in the U.S. what is a woman, and the woke crowd is being asked what is a woman, and they cannot answer. Of course they know, but they cannot answer. They will not answer, because if they say what we naturally understand to be a woman, then how can you now say that a man can be a woman or a woman can be a man? Now, I talked of grooming of the young children. Well, this whole woke mentality is already in the schools, and oftentimes it's under the radar. Except with the pandemic, one good thing that came out of the pandemic, the parents began to see what was going on, what was really being taught to them. And they're up in arms. They are angry. This is terrible. What they're being taught. When parents found out in the U.S., they exploded. And what did the government do under President Biden? Rather than doing something about these woke, liberal teachers who were grooming the children and telling them all sorts of untruths, Biden began to treat these parents who were complaining as domestic terrorists. And he sent the FBI, Federal Bureau of Investigation, to go off after them. So this good, loving, peace-abiding, concern for the children, parent, is being treated as a domestic terrorist. Terrible. In the Philippines, because many here would be Filipinos watching, gender ideology, that whole thing, you call it gender ideology, has long been in Catholic schools. Long. Very long. And a number of Catholic schools have gay pride groups, and they engage in gay pride parades. I wouldn't be surprised if this month, if they haven't done it yet, they would be participating in these things. Just yesterday, I read in the Philippine Star that there was a transgender, meaning to say a biological man who identifies as a woman, who put on a girl's uniform, and he looked like a girl, and attended the baccalaureate mass at the University of Santo Tomas. The UST is a pontifical university. I think the oldest in the Philippines, and I think they're still basically okay. But this person, this man who dressed as a woman, was there, and he was seen by his professor, and he was congratulated. Meaning to say that you've come out, you've emerged, fine. Maybe they were talking about it from before, no? And then he was applauded by several students and student leaders. So this ideology is already there, and especially in the other liberal schools, UST is still much better. They are already well entrenched. Unfortunately, the bishops aren't doing anything about that. They are not telling the schools that they should not allow anything that is there that is contrary to Catholic teaching. These are Catholic schools. So Catholic schools today have lost the essence or the reason for being. So much so, especially in the Western world, but even in more traditional countries like the Philippines. Because the purpose of a Catholic school is to raise strong Catholic men and women. But now it's more about academic excellence. It's good you should have academic excellence, but you should not lose track of the basic purpose. But this basic purpose is no longer there. And so the LGBTs are there in the Catholic schools today. There was a recent event I saw. I won't mention anymore which diocese in the Philippines, but there was some kind of event where young children were there, and they had in the church, but in front of the altar there was a big board with what the event was about, but it had the colors of the rainbow flag. Very subtle. It wasn't rainbow flag. It was but this was very clearly the colors of the rainbow flag. And this is part of grooming. Children become used to it. They see this pride flag, and there's nothing wrong with that. I saw that those same colors in my school, in my Catholic school. So a lot of this has been happening. And of course, when you talk of the LGBTs, when they gain the upper hand, and in the Western world, they already have the upper hand, they emerge from the shadows. And what they do, like in the West where they are dominant, they now dictate on everyone else. On schools, on media, on sports, on corporations, even the military. You need to be woke if you want to continue in your place of employment or your professorship or however it might be. But brothers and sisters, the intent of all of this is to celebrate sin. I don't know if you've ever seen those pride parades, especially in the West. Terrible, atrocious. Really indecent. Indecent is even a tame word, but it is to celebrate sin. And ultimately, it is to destroy the Christian faith. But it is being pushed by the powers that be, the United States, the European Union, the United Nations, by the globalist elites, the so-called World Economic Forum. In fact, in this June Pride Month, the U.S. Embassy at the Vatican displayed or continues to display a huge pride flag. Actually, they already told their embassies before that the pride flag is to be flown beside the American flag. I don't know if that's each and every day. But in June, U.S. Embassy to the Vatican displays a huge pride flag. And you've got all of these U.S. corporations that are woke, the sports corporation, whether it's Nike or whatever, and then worse, the corporations that cater to young children and to families. Disney World has become totally woke, totally all in with the LGBT crowd. Now you might think, okay, it's just some of this, but even the U.S. military, let's be more particular, even the U.S. Marine Corps, and in this Pride Month, they have an image featuring rainbow bullets. Here's what is happening. No one is spared from it as far as the use is concerned in much of the Western world. And last December 2021, the European Commission of the European Union, they proposed to extend the list of EU crimes to include hate speech. Now, you know what hate speech is. If you talk in this way, then I'm a hater, I'm a bigot, I'm a homophobe. And there are laws in certain countries that if you speak in this way, you violate the law. Then you can be arrested, you can be in prison. Well, in December last year, the European Commission, so this for all the countries of the European Union, so these dominant countries, dominant in the world, they will extend the list of European Union crimes to hate speech. That means you cannot say anything unless you will suffer that martyrdom of being arrested, being incarcerated, because you have violated the law. So this insanity is spreading. There's so much more, but this gives you a good idea of what's really going on. But this is spreading throughout the world, and it's being imposed on the needy nations of the world, because the developing nations, they need aid. But okay, you first of all, you accept reproductive health, abortion, LGBT, you accept that, then we'll see how we can help you out. So this obviously presents a lot of problems, in places where LGBT is already dominant, again, the West, people are just afraid to go against. Sorry, let me just see, because there is something on my screen which I don't know how to. Okay, maybe I can just leave that on. Okay. So people are afraid to go against. And in the other nations, in the non-Western nations, many are still uninformed. I find that in the Philippines, many are uninformed. They know about LGBT because that is, starting to take a dominant position. But they have never heard of things like woke, and all the other insanities that are going on there. Or maybe if they are aware, they're not that concerned. Like in the Philippines, we've always been very tolerant about gays. They are very prominent in show business, and they are not being persecuted. Though they will always claim that they're being persecuted, but they're not. So there are many others that they're not concerned. But you better be concerned, because one day you might just be shocked when your son comes from Catholic school and says he is a girl. Or worse, there are many who agree with the woke LGBT ideology, because this is the way that it is in the church today. Many actually agree, but all of this insanity is far from the truth. And the truth is, your child is not transgender. Rather, your child is impressionable. The young children are impressionable. That's why we teach Christian parents, you raise up your children in the way that they are to go. Whatever they see in the home, the love of father and mother, the prayers that they learn, how they treat one another, how they are respectful, this is the way that they will grow up, because they are impressionable. They are meant to be impressionable. They are meant to learn, first of all, from their parents, and the parents ought to be good folk. But if it is now about being transgender, and the reality is your son is not a she, but if he is beginning to think that he is a girl, and you you accept that, you agree with that, then you become the abuser. You are the abuser of your own child. What is the Catholic teaching? Well, first of all, even not Catholic teaching, but it used to be that homosexuality is intrinsically disordered. It is disordered. It is not normal. Unfortunately, this is no longer accepted because the influence of LGBT and the liberals and the modernists in the Western world, the all-powerful Western world, now they're changing even the textbooks and no longer accepting that homosexuality is intrinsically disordered. But the reality is, it is. And then secondly, homosexual acts. So, someone who feels and thinks and acts as if he or she is gay, that's intrinsically disordered. It is not according to the intent of God. But that by itself is not necessarily a sin. But when you act on it, in other words, you are into homosexual acts, then those are intrinsically sinful. By their very act, by their very nature, they are sinful. And in fact, homosexual acts, particularly sodomy, a man with another man, is one of the 4 sins that cry out to heaven for vengeance. We see that in Genesis 18 verses 20-21 about Sodom. So the Lord said, the outcry against Sodom and Gomorrah is so great and their sin so grave that I must go down to see whether or not their actions are as bad as the cry against them that comes to me. So this is a sin that cries out to heaven for vengeance. Now, if you read on, Abraham tries to dissuade God, and he was successful in a way. If he could find just a handful of good people, that God would not destroy Sodom and Gomorrah, but he couldn't. So Sodom and Gomorrah was destroyed. Tragically, this is also being accepted in our church, in our Catholic Church. Now, the Protestants, there are some good Protestants, okay, but most of them, especially the mainstream Protestant religions, they're already gone because they accept fully the culture of death, whether it's divorce, contraception, abortion, same-sex marriage. So they've accepted that. But we know that that's wrong, and the Catholic Church does not. Unfortunately, little by little, maybe more and more, is being accepted in our church. In the U.S., they have what they call LGBT masses. Certain parishes and priests that offer masses for the LGBTs. And obviously, it's a mass. So who do you give communion to? Those who are LGBTs, whom you are not telling that they're doing what is intrinsically sinful, and they don't need to repent. Here is a mass, you're a good Catholic, here's your Holy Communion. So this is what's happening, LGBT masses. In Germany and in other parts, priests are blessing same-sex unions. They are blessing same-sex unions, priests, Catholic priests. And in our church, we are seeing the greater acceptance of homosexuality and perhaps, same-sex unions, same-sex civil unions is already accepted even by the Pope. But I hope that it does not go to same-sex marriage. But same-sex, that is wrong. And it should not be accepted. But that's what's happening. Pope Francis himself is pro-LGBT. Now, pride. Now, we're talking of pride, gay pride. Pride is the greatest sin, as you know, which is regular church teaching. Pride is a greater sin. So, in a way, it is appropriate for LGBT to embrace pride, which is the greatest sin. You know, pride Let's be there from the very start. It's the reason why Lucifer rebelled against God and became Satan. Theologians have said perhaps it is because he knew he was Lucifer. He was the greatest angel. On the one hand, people say that he thought he was so great, and he fell into that sinful pride that he thought, now it's my turn. I'm supposed to be God. Move over, God. And of course, that couldn't happen. He rebelled, but he obviously was not God. He was defeated. But there are others also say that he knew about God's plan, and I suppose he would, because he's the top angel or archangel, and he could not accept that God would become man. What? Here it is, the greatest angel next to God, and you're not choosing me to be the Savior. You're going to choose a man, a lowly man. How can that be? He could not accept, and that's also part of pride. So that's how Lucifer became Satan. Now, when our first parents were created, Adam and Eve, and you know that the Lord told them, you can eat of anything that's here. I give you a bountiful garden, but you just don't eat of the fruit at the center of the garden. But the serpent tempted Eve and said, did God really tell you that? If you eat of it, you will become like gods. And so, what was that all about? Why did Eve and then Adam, they ate of the forbidden fruit? That's pride. You will become like gods. They were no longer just content to be in the greatest place ever, where everything was perfect, where they walked with God, they talked with God, but they wanted more. You can be like gods. Now, this is also why the first murder happened. And you know that Cain killed Abel because God looked with favor on Abel's offering. The smoke went up to heaven, but did not look with favor on Cain's offering. And so he was dejected. He was angry. And what God told him in Genesis 4 verses 6 to 7, then the Lord said to Cain, why are you angry? Why are you dejected? If you act rightly, you will be accepted. But if not, sin lies in wait at the door. Its urge is for you, yet you can rule over it. And his was the sin of pride. Why my offering is not accepted? And of course, we always think that our offering is the best. We do try to give our best to God. But his offering was not accepted, while his brothers was. And because of that, he fell into that, and he was proud, he was angry, and he committed the first murder. People also often get angry and dejected when they do not achieve what they aim for. Even Christians, they're trying to live a life that is pleasing to God, and they're trying to do what they believe to be best, but when they think or they seem to see that they're not being accepted in the right way, they can get angry at God. They can turn away from God. That is pride. If they just accept, as God tells Cain, if you act rightly, you will be accepted. You go through this, you get over it. Don't be so proud. You get over it. I have a purpose in all of this. I love you. I care for you. You can rule over this sin. Now, later on in the book of Genesis, we have the story of the Tower of Babel. And it's the same thing. Why did people build the Tower of Babel? We read in Genesis 11 verse 4, then they said, come, let us build ourselves a city and a tower with its top in the sky, and so make a name for ourselves. Otherwise, we shall be scattered all over the earth. So they were saying, we can be like gods. We can have an urban culture apart from God. And God can make a decision that He will just scatter us, and He's in control over us. No, let's take control. We can do it. Let's build this tower of paper. And that is pride. And that's actually what liberals today, modernists today, and the globalist, depopulationist elites are doing today. They're trying to build an urban culture apart from God. They're looking at man. And of course, man has achieved a lot because of God, because of the intelligence that is built into this creature created by God. But then man has become proud in all of this. However, there are many examples, but there was also this King Uzziah. He became a great king. He became a very powerful king. But then he fell into pride. We read in 2 Chronicles 26 verse 16. But after he had become strong, he became arrogant to his own destruction and acted treacherously with the Lord his God. He entered the temple of the Lord to make an offering on the altar of incense. Now, why was that so bad? Only the priest could enter by the decree of God. But he was so proud. He was so successful. God had blessed him. He defeated his enemies. He had a great kingdom. Now he was so arrogant that he entered the temple to make an offering, which was the task of the priest, and only they could legally do that. So he acted treacherously with the Lord his God. And so because of that, he was punished, and he became a leper, and he died as a leper, from the heights of power, but because of that, because of pride, to the depths of being no one, or even outside of the community. So when we read the Bible, we're always warned in so many different places about pride. I'll give you a few. In Proverbs 15 verse 25, the Lord pulls down the house of the proud. In Proverbs 16 verse 5, every proud heart is an abomination to the Lord. In Sirach 10 verse 15, God plucks up the roots of the proud. In James 4, so now New Testament, in James 4 verse 6, God resists the proud. And Peter, in the recorded version of this, in 1 Peter 5 verse 5, God opposes the proud. No doubt that LGBT ideology being against God, being about pride of man who decides to take his own destiny into his own hands, to discard the very intent and plan and design of God. But siya now just saying in effect, I am God. I decide. So a man, no, I'm a woman. That's trying to be God. That is terribly sinful pride. And so this LGBT ideology will also fall. But unfortunately, in the meantime, the question is, how many lives will be destroyed? Very, very many lives throughout the whole world. So, what should be the church's, or let me say, our community's posture, because you cannot fully rely on unfortunately, on what the church teaches about LGBT. But what really should it be? What is the proper Christian posture on LGBTs? Well, first of all, we do treat everyone with respect and dignity because they're human beings. It doesn't matter what you are. You might be the lowliest scum in the world. You're still a created human being. And in you, somewhere there, unfortunately, it's just covered. It's by a life of sin, or however it might be. What is not coming forth is your inherent dignity as a creation of God, as a child of God. But we recognize that, so we treat everyone including LGBTs, with respect. So it's wrong when they say, you hate us, no, you're a hater, you're a bigot. No, we love everyone. In fact, isn't that the second greatest commandment? We are to love our neighbors ourselves. If they're around us, then they are our neighbor. In fact, Jesus said, love your enemies. So if you can love your enemies, well, maybe this gay person who is not even doing anything wrong to you, but is just gay. Yes, of course. We love them. We would want what would be best for them, according to the very design of God. And then in our Christian community, because we do the work of evangelization, who are we after? We're after the sinners. No, some people have asked, do we invite them? Do we accept them in our renewal programs? Of course! All the more that we should do it. No? Now, obviously, we don't just judge them right where they are, but it's for everyone and anyone. In fact, especially more so for those who are sinners, who have lost their way. Who if they are even Catholic, are the lapsed Catholics. So, no one is ever excluded from coming into the programs that we have to offer. Because again, all of these programs, the basic intent is conversion to Christ, to be an authentic Christian. And those who need it most actually are most welcome. But we can never condone grievous, unrepented sin. So, we proclaim the gospel message, we proclaim what is righteous in Christ, the commandments of God, and we state what is sinful, and at the end of that, it's like Jesus treated the sinful woman, where he said, I do not condemn you, but sin no more. So if the person repents and turns to Christ, great, wonderful. But if the person, after hearing all of this, persists and does not want to change, and simply insists that their own sinful lifestyle is okay, is acceptable, and some might even say is the right thing, then it's at that point where we need to make a decision, because we cannot condone grievous, unrepented sin. It's unlike the modernists in our church. They accept both the sinner and the sin. That is not Catholic teaching. Catholic teaching is love the sinner but hate the sin. But the liberals, the progressives, the modernists in the church, they just look at the love the sinner and they skip altogether hate the sin. You cannot do that. Okay, so what do we need to do more specifically? 5 things that I'd like to mention. First of all, we need to know authentic Catholic teaching. The reality is many Catholics simply do not know. And that's why we also have Live the Faith, the newest pillar of the Live Christ, Share Christ mission. But beyond that, there's always been the teachings of the church. There's the catechism, and there are authentic teachings. There are books, there are things you can look at on the internet. You just need to be careful and selective as to what you look into. But Catholic teaching is there. Unfortunately, many do not know, and they might not bother to try to really find out. But it is important, especially during this time, because it has become very challenging due to the modernists among the clergy and even among the hierarchs. They are already teaching untruths. They are teaching heterodox as against orthodox teaching, what is actually against the authentic Catholic faith. So, when you hear something like that, when someone says to a gay person, that's okay, you're gay, God made you that way, then you need to know, no, that's not true. God did not make gay people. Even they've been trying to find a so-called gene that will show that they were made that way. Because if they're made that way, then obviously if God made me this way, then it's okay. But no, God made us male and female. Not LGBTQI and all of those other letters of the alphabet. But the modernists today are making sin acceptable. the acceptance of the full culture of death, the deviation from what has been age-old tradition and to orthodoxy. So, first of all, you need to know the faith. Number two, so you know it. You teach your children in your home, first and foremost, but even as they go to school. When they go back face to face, they go to school again, so you're not that aware of what's going on. So you try to look, well, what was the lesson plan? Son, daughter, what did you learn today? And that kind of thing. And if you had the time, you had the inclination, you can, try to get to know the teachers and the administrators and find out a little bit more what that particular school, even if it's a Catholic school. In the U.S., it is said that the best way for your child to lose their faith is to send them to a Catholic school. Terrible. But unfortunately, there's truth in it. Hopefully, in the Philippines and other developing parts of the world, it's not the case. But you need to teach your kids in the home, in the school, through the community. Get the older but still young children to join reputable groups or organizations. Participate in parish groups, because you can see, at least in the parish, they look okay. You need to find out. Because it is said that even among the youth, there are a lot of LGBTs already. So this teaching of kids is for many parents, either because they don't know themselves and they might also be a little bit worldly, so they don't know what to teach. But you have to know authentic Catholic teaching, which is the first thing to do. But maybe not much of that is happening now. But if that teaching by parents does not happen, then your kids will be taught by social media. And who dominates social media today? LGBT. And they're in their gadgets, even the young ones. And you, of course, cannot monitor everything. You try to put limits on it, and both time limits and what they can watch, and you need to occasionally look on at what they are looking at. But it's so very easy to be groomed, even by social media, dominated by LGBT. And again, the Catholic schools don't think just because you sent them to a Catholic school, then they're okay. There are a lot of LGBTs in Catholic schools. And in the U.S., much more of the teachers. I don't know, like in the Philippines, I hope not, but I would presume that there also would be. So we need to take hold of the education of our children. If you can do homeschooling, all the better. Now, number 3, you need to know what the enemy is doing. Because, again, most, not just many, but most Catholics do not know. I'm surprised that many, even in the community, never heard of woke. What is woke? And I won't go into that now because that's another long. And I've spoken about this sometime in the past. But you need to know what your enemy is doing, because if you don't know, how can you oppose? How can you oppose what you don't know? You don't know what is right. You don't know what is wrong. And if you don't know who the enemy is or what the enemy is doing, how can you defeat that enemy? The good that you're trying to do in your home will be undermined. And it will be the slow death of your child and your family and your home. So, to know what the enemy is doing, I'd like to recommend to you the latest book that I wrote. It's Females Are Fabulous, the threequel, number 3 in that Females Are Fabulous books. But it focuses on gender ideology, being woke. So, you go through that. You'll learn. Not everything. You need to do your own research, but at least the basic, which again I find that many Christians, many Catholics are unaware of. So you can take hold of that. It's a free ebook. Go to the Hermit of Antipolo. Number 4, you also need to speak out against gender insanity. When you see it, when you are confronted by it, when someone is telling you these things, even if that person is a priest or a nun, you need to defend their faith. And if someone is saying, well, here's this transgender, you need to use the right pronouns so as not to offend the person, don't do it. If that person is a male, say he, him. If that person is a female, say she, her. Don't conform. Because when you conform, you're not being nice. No? You are condoning and you are supporting all of this insanity and supporting that person in that erroneous belief that he or she is not what he or she truly is. So you speak out whenever you have the opportunity. There are again challenges there also because, like in the West, they are putting laws, legal things that penalize people when you are not sufficiently woke, or even such things as not using preferred pronouns. But you have to see what your situation is. But it's just to say, don't go along. Now, number 5, build up an army of holy warriors. And holy warriors are consecrated to Mary. And do what holy warriors are supposed to do. So the first 4 is about being instructed, being educated, and then confronting the enemy. But this now is the positive. So we're not just reactive. No, we're not just trying to put a defense and trying to push back the enemy, but we want to go on offense. And that is the way you can push back the enemy. So we want to build an army of holy warriors that are consecrated to our Mama Mary. And the holy warriors, you continue with evangelization. You continue with formation. A podcast like this is part of formation. Now I know it's long. It's an hour. But if you realize how terrible things really are and how much you might not know, but you need to know, I think it's worth it. You cannot talk about these things just for 5 minutes. In fact, there is so much more in all of this that I would cover in this short, relatively short podcast of an hour. So there has to be formation. But being holy warriors, you need to be holy. Strive for holiness. We're not perfectly always striving for holiness. And you need to be warriors. You need to be engaged in the war. And you simply need to know that a main enemy today, not just the pro-aborts, and of course those that provide abortion facilities, Planned Parenthood, and the ideological, corrupt, immoral West that is pushing this on the rest of the world. But today we are looking at, especially as they are celebrating Pride Month of June, a main enemy today is LGBT ideology. Pride is the greatest sin. And if only they would know that they embrace pride and they call their rainbow flag the pride flag. If they only would realize that they are into grave sin. Amen.